Hey everybody, sit down around the hearth, grab a frosty mug of ale. Welcome to the Lion's Pride Tavern, where we discuss all things Azeroth. Welcome everybody, we are back with episode number 12. That means we've been going strong for 3 months. We have over 350 plus followers. And last week, we were ranked 9 out of 4,200 podcasts on Podomatic.com. So I want to just throw a big shout out. Thank you for all of our listeners for making us so popular. And we love doing what we're doing. So please send us your comments and we'll talk about them. If you got questions, we'll talk about them. So we're going to start off and introduce our panel tonight. I'm your host, Fafford. I play a Dwarven Beastmaster Hunter in the awesome game World of Warcraft. Next up, we have Joe Bowie.
Hi, I'm Joe Bowie. I play a Worgen Fire Mage.
Next up, Lorelei.
Hi, I'm Lorelei, your Night Elf Fury Warrior.
We have a Pistol from up north.
Where the snow is now starting to fly. Yep, I'm a Pistol. I play a Draenei Protection Paladin.
And we have Tappuccino.
Hi, I'm Tappuccino, your Resto Druid.
Very good. And tonight we have back for our second appearance, Bronzebeard.
Hello, hello.
Bronzebeard plays a Dwarven Fury Warrior.
And I think his character just died.
Of course it did.
Well, we don't call it dying, we call it bronzebearding.
What did you jump off of?
High Mountain.
So we won't ask him his background questions because we've had him on here before. What we're going to get into first off is we just want to briefly touch Karazhan again, see where everybody's at on that. So, Joe Bowie, where are you at on Karazhan? Have you done it yet?
Yeah, I did do a run. I was actually in a run with Lorelei and Tappuccino, and made some progress in it. It's a very challenging dungeon. Fun, but very challenging. We made it. I think we made it to the third boss before we were it was kind of getting late for us that night, and we weren't really feeling like we were going to get past that right away, and so we called it quits that time. But we do plan on hitting it again, I think.
Definitely.
Keep trying.
Well, let's let Lorelei talk about it a little bit. Third boss. How many times have you run Karazhan?
That was my first time, and I really liked the new dungeon. I really liked the first boss we did. Was the first boss the opera?
Yes.
Okay, and the play on Wicked with I think it's called Wicket. That one was interesting and fun. It was a little difficult because I don't think any of us had seen it before. So we kind of going in there blind, figuring it out from the dungeon journal. But we got that one down after a couple of tries, so I thought that was really good. And I think the next one we did was the Iron Maiden. Is that right?
Maiden of Virtue.
No, Maiden of Virtue. I don't know. She felt like an Iron Maiden. She just hit us hard.
She's an Iron Lady.
Yes, she is. And we have got to figure that one out. But it was fun. It was extremely challenging. There is a tremendous amount of trash in that place. So be prepared.
And long corpse runs.
Oh, God, yes. All the way from the beginning, every single time.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yes.
How about a Pistol? Have you run it yet?
I did last week. Haven't this week at all, but enjoyed it. Again, got past the opera. We didn't get past Maiden. So I'm looking forward to at some point downing her.
Joe Bowie, did you actually get past Maiden, or is that where you stopped?
No, I think it was so much trash that I thought we fought two bosses.
It did feel like
Feels like you've done
it
eight.
did feel like 3 bosses.
Yeah, you really have to have a good strategy to work that one out, and people who are really, you have to react fast. There's not much margin of error now.
No, and it didn't help that the DBM timer was off too on the Opera, and we just didn't have any time to jump into the little puddles before they blew us all over the room.
Tap, what's your take on it from healing?
Like it's been said previously, it is quite a challenge. I've run it 3 times now, and got a different opera boss each time, which was kind of neat. The first one was Westfall, kind of like the West Side Story, which that was our first week, and we just couldn't get that one down. And then the second 2 times, it was a little easier. We had the Beauty and the Beast, and then what was that last one? We said, was that the Beauty and the
Wizard of
Beast?
Oz takeoff? Was it?
And they were I think a little easier. We're a little better geared as well. Didn't get past the second boss, but like they said, there was just so much trash in between. It did feel like a long one. We did have quite a few runs back with the corpses, because it is kind of tough to heal. There's a lot of stuff that we're still learning and still trying to figure out. So from a healing perspective, it's just challenging as the rest of it. So be prepared for some death runs and spending some time in there.
Nice.
Rating old school.
Yes, as a party.
Bronzebeard, have you been through it yet?
Yeah, we got down the Opera in the group that I ran with a pistol, but Min of Virtue is just brutal if you don't have the damage.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about last week's raid real quick. We did get all the bosses down by ourselves. Yes.
Yay!
Hey.
Yeah.
Pat self on back.
So, Joe Bowie, let's give us a quick rundown on what happened.
Well, first night we plowed through the bosses up into, I believe we completed through the spider boss, I think, or did we? No, we still had the spider boss to finish, I think. We got very close on the spider boss. And then the second night we came back, finished the spider, and did we make it all the way to the tree on the first night?
We did.
Oh, my mistake. I'm sorry. So we made it all the way to the tree, and then second night we went back and we took on Cenarius, and Cenarius was bugging out in a strange way. He was going into phase 2 way before he should have been. Did a couple of tries on that while it was being buggy, reset the instance, came back in, killed him, and then I think it was 2 tries on Xavius, and we got him on the second.
And I do have to say, for all my listeners that follow me, no, I didn't live through the spider boss at all. All the attempts. That one just kicks my butt.
You Bronzebeard on that fight frequently.
I think it's worse than Bronzebearding because it's usually because I hit those stupid whirlwinds. I can't get off the spider web thing. I don't know how you guys do it. I think everybody grabs feathers but me, and I get thrown off.
I think what it really comes down to on that, there's that feeling like you have to rush across those things. And so everybody tries to get across them really quickly. And really what you need to do is kind of just be really careful as you cross them. If the tornado's in your way, stop, back up, wait for an opening where you can run past it and that kind of thing. Because, if you just try and rush past it, chances are you're going to get clipped by that thing and it's going to go badly for you.
So what I've noticed is it kind of zigzags back and forth across it. So I was waiting, and then I was like, okay, it's on the other side, and I ran. And as soon as I started running, it came back over and caught me. So I thought, okay, this time I'm going to run right at it, and it'll zig out of my way, and I'll go right past it, and it didn't move. And I ran right into it. So those are both fun times.
Another difference between you dying Fafford and Bronzebeard is we're actually trying to heal you.
Ooh.
That is cool.
Dum dum dum.
So Lorelei, did you expect anything different from us from the raid? Was there something that this is the question I'll pose? Was there something that kind of stuck out in your mind about what we did? I mean, besides the glitch.
Yeah, I think, especially on the Xavius fight, I think that last pull was especially one of the better ones. Um, Everybody seemed to be working a lot harder on moving things where they needed to move to, and staying tighter together instead of all of a sudden it's like, oh, let's just run all over the board. Because sometimes it gets so chaotic that you forget, oh, I have to be here and I have to be there and I'm a sleeper and I'm awakened. But I think that last pull that we did was one of the better ones.
Epistle, how about you?
I'd actually kind of wondered, it may have been me, it may not have been, but I felt like we were just, for our group, which is a social, and we don't tend to be demanding or pushy or unpleasant, but it did feel like there was just a little bit of prickliness before that last pull. And I think there was a kind of okay, let's get it together, let's focus, let's do this. Just enough little prickliness that we thought, okay, we're going to totally focus in on this one, and pulled it off.
I think the prickliness might have been a little bit of me, because I kind of chastised people who were not doing the mechanics that we had explained earlier, and I was like,
That's what it was.
Yeah, and I was like, all right, look, you have to move to the left. There isn't, wiggle room on this. Just get out of the group, move to the left. It's only to the left.
I wasn't just you. I was a little grumpy too.
So Joe Bowie and I were kind of talking before the start of the podcast, and he made mention that, when I have to do all the talking and I have to call everything, my DPS really drops off. And now you guys feel my pain.
Yeah.
Being able to get everybody focused and still try to keep the DPS numbers, it's not easy. So I have to give my hats off to Joe Bowie. I've given him a little bit more responsibility in the raid, and he's taken it quite well. So let's everybody give him a little golf clap.
Clap, 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 clap.
Thank you. I think that would go badly, but but it wasn't just him that was grumpy. I was feeling a little bit too, but I don't think it was all just Adonis in the raid. I think when we feel like things don't go fairly, as in Blizz has somehow messed up, I think everyone gets really grumpy.
Oh yeah.
And so I think the fact that that it was the boss was being unpredictable at strange times, I think put us all just a little out of sorts. So once we're done Cenarius, and then Xavius, you sort of a little on edge. What's going to go wrong now? Is something buggy? Is something going to happen?
Yeah, because you never know. I remember running lots of LFRs in the previous expansion, and there were a couple of times that I was just like, that's not the way this happened last time, but yet it's worse, and so I don't know how that works with Blizzard, how they get their little glitches in there like that, but ours was resolved, which was a good thing. We just went out, everybody exited the dungeon or the raid, and then we reset the instance and went back in, and it turned when it was supposed to, and we got her down, and then I thought it was pretty good. Tap, what did you think?
For the Xavius fight, the healing team got it together much better this week than previously. We have a better understanding of what you have to do being in the dream state as opposed to being awake. That was something that we were a little confused about last week. So this week went much smoother on that end. We were able to communicate, okay, I'm in the dream state and you're in the dream state. We're going to take turns cleansing the tanks, those types of things. So that really helped. So I think it went, on a healing perspective, much better. And it was a nice pull. Like, the second pull was a very nice pull. So, I agree with that. It was a much better run, even with a little bit of grumpiness here and there. You did a good job.
Well, for our listeners, when we get grumpy, it's not really grumpy. We don't do any yelling or screaming. We just kind of like, it was a little more forceful in our tones.
It's like Canadian grumpy.
Yeah, polite grumpy.
Yeah. We pull up the big boy voices.
We'll say things like, you'll be wanting to pull that mob at the right time, please.
Or in the midst of the fight, I might actually call someone's name who's not moving.
I did notice that.
But
Sometimes
see,
you
I don't
have to.
so just so our listeners know, we don't do any calling out. We're not elitists. We don't do any of that stuff. But when we do call somebody out, it's usually not to call them out because it's, hey, you're not doing your job. It's more of, hey, you have that function above your head. You need to move, get the blades out of the group. It's more
Yeah.
of a helping rather than a finger point.
Yeah, I am your human BBM.
I did know that it seemed like it helped with the dispels when the tanks were calling out which ones to dispel. Is that true, Tap, or was that just?
Oh, absolutely. Because it's sometimes like, I'm looking at my bars, and both tanks look like they have something on them. So if they're not telling us who to dispel, then we may not know who should be going next. Where it's, every other one in the heat of the battle, you still can get lost, about who's going to be dispelled next and all. So that definitely is a big help. And I think it helps keep the tanks and the healers focused as well.
Yeah, and I really like the way our communication is on the raids because we do help each other out. So Bronzebeard, what did you think of the raid last weekend?
I had
I
a
know
little bit of frustration with Xavius, and the bug was driving me insane while we were having to endure that. For me, the frustration I had with Xavius was the inconceivable horrors were just not going down, and their effect ruination was wiping the group single-handedly.
Yep. And once we found that out, and I think even there was somebody else possibly, um, you know, oh, God, I just lost it. There was somebody else dispelling, and I think that was and it was doing it right in the group, and I think that was hurting us too. I could be wrong on that, but it just
Yeah, that happened a couple times, and that was very frustrating because I was about to run out, and then I got dispelled and thought, "Whoops, that's a whole lot of raid damage right there."
Yeah, I noticed that. I think you both had said, don't dispel. And I'm looking, I had just like hit a healing button. I'm like, no, I know I didn't hit my dispel button. And I know it wasn't any of the healers, so somebody must have, saw it and hit it.
Yeah, some mistake in the heat of battle.
Well, that's going to lead me into my next question, because can be a very touchy question, but reasonable expectations of raid members, and that can go from gear to understanding the fight. So I want to hear just basic opinions on what you think reasonable expectations are of raid members. Now I'm talking, it could be normal, it could be mythic, it could be LFR. It could be the raid leader, the DPS, the tanks, the healers. It doesn't matter. And my example of that is when, and I do this a lot. I ask, because we've done these fights several times. I don't want to have to go through the whole explanation because that takes up a lot of valuable raid time. So I ask, is there, does anybody have any questions? And I know it's a tough thing as a human to be the only one to go, yeah, I do have a question. It can get a little unnerving, but our group is really, really good at, if you got a question, we're more than willing to help you. I just want to get that out there. So if some of our listeners are our raid members, never, I say this at work all the time too. The only stupid question you will ever ask is the one you don't ask. So let's start off with Joe Bowie. Reasonable expectations.
Yeah, reasonable expectations. I think the first expectation that I have for most raid members in general, and I'm talking mostly normal, maybe heroic kind of thing. I'm not talking about mythic level, because in mythic level things start to get a lot tighter. I think a good reasonable expectation is that the people pay attention to the strategy as it's been prescribed, as what we're going to attempt, and to try their best to, adhere to that strategy as much as they possibly can. I think that's pretty important. Of course, a reasonable level of gear for the level of dungeon or the level of raid that you're going to be fighting in is appropriate. I don't like seeing when somebody if somebody comes in and they're really under geared and that can even be okay as long as they notify us, kind of thing. If they're a bit under geared, like say somebody's got, 810 or 815, 820 gear, and they're not going to be pulling good numbers, if they let us know ahead of time, that's not such a big deal. But if somebody, just kind of keeps that under their hat and they're dying constantly and stuff like that because the healers don't know they may need a little extra special attention, I think that can be problematic. But in general, I think just people knowing their classes well enough or being comfortable enough with them that they feel that they can contribute decently. I'm not expecting people to be blasting off the DPS charts or being the ultimate healer or anything like that. Just, that they can reasonably well play their class. And that's more or less it. But the biggest thing, I think, is their ability to listen and to try and follow the mechanics and the strategy that has been put in place. Another great thing is when somebody comes in and they're not afraid to speak up, and we've talked a little bit about this in the past, about maybe they've done that raid with another group and they saw something that we could improve upon, and their willingness to speak up and say, hey, I've seen this before, and to help out the group. And then also on top of that, be willing to accept it if we're not ready to try that particular strategy. So just a kind of an easygoing but also helpful kind of attitude.
So you're not big fans of somebody trying to tell you a strategy when the pull timer's just gone off.
No, like the time. There are times for that, and times when there's not. Like if we're about to pull the boss, we've gone over the strategy, and we usually ask, does anybody have any questions? And then like if they wait until after that and then they go, maybe you should do this differently, then it's probably an inappropriate time. But while we're still talking through the strat, if a particular topic comes up, like we say, okay, like for an example, last night it came up as to where to move the blades, and some groups like to put the blades between the boss and the ranged, and some groups like to put the blades off to the side. And that doesn't necessarily make a huge difference in the raid. And it's a suggestion we had actually covered in the past, which I don't think that player knew that. But we said, well, yeah, we've talked about that. We explained why we weren't going to switch to that, and then we kept on with the please move to your left.
Exit stage left. Well, one of the things I want to mention, and I think this is a biggie, is in our description for Open Raid, we just have a couple of things we expect of you guys. One is to have Deadly Boss mods. It's an add-on. It helps out a lot. The other is to have GTFO. Now, these are expectations. I don't enforce them, but it's really good that you do. You got to bring your own flasks, and you should have gems and enchants already installed on your equipment. If you have the equipment that has gems, you should have your enchants. Now, granted, I understand the enchants are really expensive, the top tier enchants, and until you get your top gear item, I wouldn't put a top gear enchant on it either. But just have something, if you've got an empty gem slot, money's easily made. It's easy enough to go to the auction house, spend $300-400 on it, whatever it is, and put it in just by raid time. The biggest one for me is raiding with the group consistently. We raid every Friday and Saturday. Now we're going to have a raid this Friday and Saturday, even though it's Thanksgiving. Friday, I understand. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand it's a holiday weekend and there's a lot of turkey to be eaten. And, there's leftovers on Fridays. And people go to other travel and all that, so that's okay. We'll do mythics if we don't do a raid. We're pretty, easy going about that. But just stick with the raid group. I know sometimes you get so involved in, oh, I just want to keep advancing. I want to get through all the bosses. I want to see all the fights, and I want to get on to the next thing. But yet, when you run with a group consistently, I think it makes you a better player, and I also makes it a better raid group as a team. Lorelai, what do you think about that?
Yes, I agree that everyone should have their flasks, their gems, their enchants, and the cheap ones are, at least on Ysera's server, they're reasonable now. They're down to a couple of hundred. I also think that everybody should at least watch a video of the fight, just so that they get the visual in their mind about what's going to happen. We may not do it that way, and that's going to depend on if we have a lot of ranged or a lot of melee, but you should at least have an idea and not completely depend on the raid lead or whoever's going to be calling things out to constantly explain every little bit. I also think that, and this is maybe not something that is being prepared kind of thing, but I mentioned this last night to Epistle. There are times in between the fights where things are going on that could be done after the raid or during break that are taking up time. And that's where I get a little frustrated, is that, taking a 10 to 15 minute break between bosses is using up your flasks, and if you're still buying them off the auction house, you're spending several thousand gold on them. And there are some things that we could just do later instead of wasting time and money doing things like that. I don't want to call it out in particular because I don't want to offend anybody, but I believe in raid etiquette, and that's probably because I come from a guild. It's not an elitist guild, but there are expectations, and we have those in place in our guild rules. And it's, let's come and kill as many bosses as we can. We have fun, but we can clear a lot in the 2 hours that we raid every 3 days a week. And I've kind of grown up with that. And it's being respectful to your other guildmates, that you have your seals and that you don't have to stop, right as we do the pull. Oh, I got to go back and get my seals. Or can you stop and let me, change something, transmog it right in the middle of getting ready to fight. It's just be prepared, be ready to go, know what you need to do, at least to a certain extent. And then we can get things done much faster and kill more bosses and progress even faster.
Yeah, no. So one of the things my wife was doing the other day is that we had talked about in family what we were going to do that raid night or that raid weekend, and so we talked about, well, let's go through normal, and if we blast through all the bosses, then we'll go on to Trials of Valor (TOV). And I'd never seen it, and she'd never seen it, so she went and ran an LFR TOV just to see what it looked like. Not necessarily that's the way it's going to be, because everybody knows how LFRs are, but it gave you an idea of what was coming and what was going to happen. So, Epistle, expectations?
Yeah, I echo what people have been saying, although I have kind of one word in my mind that kind of circles around all these issues, which is making sure that the match or the fit is right. So I will think about things like your knowledge of the fight needs to fit the rest of the players in that raid. So, for example, at the beginning of the expansion of Legion, we all went in together as a group fairly early on without a very large understanding, and so there was an expectation that we're all learning the fights together, which we have done. If someone was to join in with us now, I think we have a reasonable expectation that they will have done some research, done some preparation, got their gear ready to go. So there's that match that they're, someone coming in is ready to match with that. if somebody's been around for a while but sort of has gotten a little lax on making sure their gear is enchanted, or that they've got food buffs, or that they're figuring out how to get some flasks in game, then there's kind of a mismatch that starts to happen, and that's, I think, when some tension starts to build in the group. So some people are ready and some people aren't. That's a bad thing. So little what Lorelei was saying too is, if some people are there ready to go, ready to be on task, and ready to fly, and they're sitting around waiting, then there's some mismatch there too. So everyone isn't all set to go. Same thing with probably with knowledge of rotation, knowing your class really well, whether it's mitigation or how to optimize your DPS. Early in new content, the match doesn't matter so much. Everyone's kind of figuring it out, but the further and further on we go, the more we have a sense of there's got to be a match between people's skill levels. And we have flexibility, as we've said, as a group, but still the expectations sort of, I think, gradually creep up during an expansion. After new content is there, we might start and develop slower than maybe some other raiding groups might, but we're comfortable with that rate of progression. So someone coming in needs to understand that they match. So then, I guess the last thing I'm thinking about matching is a social connection, because there has to be a social match. So if you're coming in thinking we got to down everything right now, it's out, the content's out, and we got to do it in 2 weeks and be through everything, that's not a match with us. We're working at a kind of a slower, steadier pace. But if you push too much, it might not fit sort of our pace of working. So it's really, to me, it's always about that match to make sure that your knowledge and ability really fits the group with which you're raiding. In our case, the group that we have. And so hats off to Blizz. I think they've figured out how to create a kind of an LFR, normal, heroic, mythic kind of progression, so that anyone can kind of start to figure out where they fit and to develop their skill level.
Tap, what do you think? Reasonable expectation.
I agree with everything people have said, and and especially the basics too. When you say have your flasks, have your food, be gemmed and enchanted, even if it's the lower level stuff. I mean, I've noticed that we'll put a table out, and there's still people that, that warning that you have when when we check to see who's ready, the ready check, and there's still people that haven't even had any food. And maybe it doesn't seem like much to some people, but every little bit helps. Especially where we are progressing. Like you said, we're not just going in every week and doing something different. We're progressing through these raids, and we want to do, better each week, get the bosses down quicker, so that we can progress even further. So I think just having the basics and knowing at least some of your fights, asking questions, when you need to, are very important. I'm working on trying to get the cauldrons, but unfortunately, with the way they're doing the alchemy, that's may not or may happen sooner or later. So be prepared to have your flasks, have your food, or at least eat what's there.
Bronzebeard, what do you think as a melee DPS? What's your reasonable expectations going into a raid?
Well, if you're going in as a melee DPS, you really have to not stand in fire. As long as you can do that, you'll be great. As long as that you do that, you'll stay alive and you'll do a consistent and high amount of damage, regardless of what stuff you have. Just don't die, basically. You have to be able to not die if you really want to raid with any group. It's all about not dying. It's as simple as that.
I have to agree to a certain extent on there. Of course, there's the occasional, accidental death while you're playing, that you just end up messing up here and there, or you end up taking some massive damage. But, I think that goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier about, hey, it's, know it a little bit, or listen to the strategy. Cause like there's times when I see players come in and the fight starts and then they don't do some major mechanic and die like right away. And then, if we only have so many battle reses during the fight, so we may not be able to get that person up, to continue to have them contribute to the fight. And so sometimes it can be a little frustrating.
Yeah, that's a topic I want to touch on. So, battle reses. So, it's really important as a raid leader that I have control over who I bring up. I understand that there are people that have the self battle reses and all that kind of stuff. So when they go down, they can come right back up. Regardless, if you can battle res, and I don't know if this is a reasonable expectation across other raids, but I know it is with mine. I really like the fact that nobody battle reses until I say, bring up so and so. And I even may get reminded because it's like, oh, we're getting down close to the fight. Should we bring up so and so because we have a battle res and it looks like we're going to take them out? I don't have a problem with that. But when all of a sudden I look down, and we got 0 battle reses and the tank goes down. It's pretty much a wipe from there. So my expectation is there are certain decisions that need to be made by the raid leadership because at the appropriate time it can be used to save the group, where at other times it's just, the guy wants to stay in the fight and keep going. I understand that. But man, if you use the res at the wrong time, or, and I know you guys have seen this, I've actually said, well, let's hold off. We got a minute till the second battle res comes up. Once I still have one battle res in reserve, absolutely, because I'm really concerned about keeping the tanks and the healers up, but I can't sacrifice a battle res on a healer if the tanks are getting pounded on, because I got to be able to keep the tanks up, because everybody knows if the tanks go down, it's done. We're over. Unless we're really close to the end boss or the end of the boss, we're gonna wipe.
Yeah, I think that's that's important with the battle reses. When usually it falls on the healers to battle res, and I know just even reading forums and just playing that, the raid leader really needs to make the decision on the battle res. And I think the only time that I have ever just automatically just hit B res was when a tank goes down in the middle of a fight.
Yeah, and I expect that out of our healers too, because like I said, the tanks are to me the most important to keep up, because without them, they can't swap back and forth on their stacks if there's only one of them. And we have done that a couple of times. Thank goodness for Death Knight tanks, huh?
I know our Death Knight tank saved me a couple times.
So just be leery. That's one of my expectations as a raid leader. And I agree with what everybody else is saying. I think you should watch a video. You should be gemmed and enchanted reasonably. I'm not saying you have to be, maxed out and spend all that gold, because I understand gear changes. I've done it several times where I just gemmed and enchanted something, and we go into the raid, and boom, I got a new gear piece, and now I got to do it all over again. What a waste. But that's how the game works. So.
Well, just the thought is, I noticed that even on the issue of food or flasks, when we first started, people were using sort of, catch as catch can, whatever you had, people were using it. Maybe we're sharing a versatility feast or something. But I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, our standards have changed. Somewhere along the way, we're just expecting that everybody is going to be prepared and ready with their optimum food. And I don't think we made it as a decision. We just kind of realized, well, now that's where we're at in our rating habit, and everyone has to kind of live up to that kind of shared standard now.
I think I kind of fall into a similar line with Lorelei, where, when I go raid, my personal expectation, what I expect from myself is, I try and make sure that I'm ready ahead of time. I've already bought my flasks. I've already gotten my seals. I've got my potions. I've done a bit of research. I'm ready to help out the group. But I'm also not one of those people who's looking for a carry. So, and for those listeners who may not understand what looking for a carry means, that's basically where you're looking for a group of overpowered people to carry you through a fight that you're not really prepared for. And so, the standards that I hold myself to, I kind of hope that other people will hold themselves to similar standards, but they don't always. And so sometimes it's just, okay, well, that person's not doing that. All right, well, we'll see how they perform. But I know that for myself, I just always try and be as prepared as I can be for it, just because I want to see the whole group get through it, and I don't want to be quote unquote that guy who doesn't who isn't really contributing well or is holding people up and that sort of thing.
Actually, even on that note, is being on time is very important too.
Yeah.
Being prepared, being on time. Like we're expected to start raiding at 8:45, and yeah, it can be a couple of minutes that give or take, but everybody should be ready to raid, to go in and start at 8:45 or whatever the time may be in your time zone, or whatever your raid may be. Don't keep people waiting. It's going to happen. I mean, sometimes it happens where we have to wait for maybe a healer, or the tank is late, or whatever the case may be. But I think everybody should, like I said, be ready, have your seals, have your flasks, have your food, and be there and be on time. And I think our group is really good at that too. Where we are ready to go, we are ready to raid within a few minutes of our start time. So I think, kudos to us for that too, and to the people we raid with.
Yeah, because what we normally do is if it's open raid, and it's your first time joining us, I will send battle tag requests out at 15 after the hour, and then the group invites go out on the bottom of the hour, and then we start at the quarter to the hour. That's 40. That's a half hour worth of getting ready and getting your seals and all that before we actually start. We have started a little earlier because we see as the people start coming on. Some people come in just after 5 after the hour, and we'll like invite them to the raid group, and then we'll sit there and yak about what's been going on the week. And we've had our raid groups ready to go by the bottom of the hour, but yet we still wait to that quarter till because that's our start time. So anybody else got any other reasonable expectations they want to talk about?
This is more of a question for you, Fafford. I've noticed on the last couple of weeks on Open Raid that very few people are signing up. And my question for you is, how hard does that make it for you when people are just sort of assuming, okay, I'm going to be there, but you don't know that there may be 4 or 5 people signed up for a raid, but we've got 15 when we start. Would you prefer that people sign up on Open Raid so that you have a better idea of what makeup you're going to have?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. It is just like when you do any events anywhere in life. You throw a birthday party and you throw out all the invitations, and you don't know how many people are going to show up, so you don't know how much cake to get, how much ice cream. It's the same principle here. I would love if everybody signed up, but I can't even get my own son to sign up as tank. So what I've done is I put 0 tanks. I don't need any because I know the 2 tanks are always going to show up. But I still have tanks signing up for our open raid events, even though we don't need tanks, and it says 0. But yes, it does make it a little bit nicer. I used to really stress about it when we first started because we'd have 20 people sign up on open raid, and the next weekend 3. And it's like, oh my God, is it even going to happen? Are we going to be able to do this? And then we'd still have 20, 25 people there, because they'd meander in. It is important just on the aspect is it doesn't wear so much and make me feel older faster. I get grayer hairs. But I've learned to just mellow with it and just go with it. My wife stresses out a lot, and then I have to calm her down and, make her do jumping jacks or something.
Is she smacking you in the background?
Oh, she's giving me the evil glare eye.
So does that mean I need to start signing up? Because I don't think I've signed up in like 2 years.
Joe Boy and I both.
Now, the one thing I do say in my open raid write-up is that if you're part of the core group, and yes, I do consider everybody who raids with us every weekend part of the core group, I know they're going to make a very reasonable attempt at showing up every week. And there are a few people that religiously use it. Theo is one of them. If he can make it, he signs up. But if he doesn't sign up, I know he's not going to show up unless something changed in his schedule. So that's awesome. And he's one of those great people that uses it for what it's for. And I know it's kind of a pain because it's out of WoW. But if we all were in the same guild, yeah, then it would be easy because I'd just throw it up on the calendar and everybody would sign up. But we're not. And I think that's what makes this group even better is that we're not all part of the same actual guild in the same realm. Because you can have a lot of drama that way. This way you can go have drama in your guild and it's okay.
I sign up every week as well.
You do.
I also
Mostly
think
good. Sometimes I forget, but I try to get in there at least by Friday somehow.
Although I like the because Open Raid does have like a honored, a reputation bar, so you can like get reputation when you sign up and people, vote how well you do. So that's kind of cool. Kind of gives you incentive.
Well, I tell you, as a raid leader, I use that a lot because I get people. It has a friend button, so all my friends are yellow. They have a little yellow star by them, and the people I don't know have a white star. So what I'll do is I'll go click on them and I'll look at their reputation. And for instance, we'll just look at Glory's Way, since I'm on right at the moment. Okay, he's got a 5-star average of 4 out of 432 votes. That means 432 people have actually given him a rating, and he's kept it as an average of 5-star. That's awesome. He also has a 54% honored rating reputation with Open Raid, which means he showed up for the raid. He signed up for all these raids. That's awesome. And when I look at that, I go, that's a good player right there. And then I get these ones that say in their comment, oh, I'm 8 out of 8 bosses and blah, 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 and mythic, blah. And then you look at their Open Raid stats and they're 2 stars, which means they don't show up very often or somebody didn't rate them very high. And they have absolutely no reputation. So it's like, yeah, So just for those people who are listening that do use Open Raid, it is important.
I've also noticed we've built a more sort of resilient social network where people know people, or they've met outside of the game, or they know their text, or they have Facebook or whatever else as ways of connecting, so that if somebody isn't on by half past, it's easy enough to sort of text or check in and find out where they are, what's going on. And so generally the core group is consistent and always showing up, and if not, they might have already talked to somebody ahead of time. So we have a more rich way of connecting with each other than perhaps we did a few years ago.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and one of the things I really like about it is that it does take, so don't get disappointed if you're not in our group or if you're not in a good raid group. It takes years to put together a good group. I mean, we've all got our stories. We all know, how we got to this point. That's why I always ask one of the questions, how did you come across, to our special guests, how did you come across this raid group? How did you find out? And it's usually friend of a friend or, somebody knew somebody, which is great, because we're all like-minded. We all have the same play style. And because we've had a couple of people that have been with us that were elitists and tried to get us moving and motivated and all that, and now they're not with us and they're off doing their own thing, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, but we're still chugging along. And I just, the whole story of the rabbit and the hare just comes to mind. We may be the tortoise just moving along, but we're moving along steady.
Well, we know who we are, and we know what kind of people match well with us, and hopefully it goes both ways.
And I do want to shout out to all of our raid members. You guys are fantastic. You really are. We do a great job. Everybody gets along with everybody. We don't have any super drama, because that can really ruin it. When you got somebody whispering me saying, I don't like this person because they have pink boots on or whatever, that just drives me crazy.
Come on, I wore those once. No.
But it was bunny slippers. Come on.
That was before I had my transmog mount, man.
All right. So tips for our listeners. Let's go to that question. Does anybody have any new tips for our listeners? I'm not even gonna. Oh, go ahead, Joe Bowie.
Yeah, I would say my biggest tip that I have is if you're working on an alt, you know, I can't stress enough how important doing the world quests and like checking out what gear is available on the world quests and going out and doing that. I've had an absolute stunning amount of like good gear drop for my alts lately. In fact, in some ways, I've been even jealous of that for my main. Um, and you know, I just leveled up my warrior, and he's already almost 850 gear level, and I've never taken him into a raid. Um, so just if you're leveling a new alt, get out there and do some of the world quests for gear. The chances of it Titan forging or something along those lines can really help you get like raid ready geared up pretty darn quick.
Lorelai?
My tip is if you think you need help, ask for help. Whether it's your spec, it's your rotation, if it's anything, ask for help. I ask for help all the time. And it's the only way you learn and get better. And find somebody in the group that you feel comfortable talking to, and maybe they can direct you toward somebody that could help you with whatever it is you're having a problem with, even if it's just a question on what should I do what should I be doing right now. I've had that happen while we're in the raid. Somebody's asked me, well, where am I supposed to stand? And I just whisper them back. I mean, it's no big deal. Just maybe somebody didn't hear something and they're a little embarrassed to ask, but just don't be afraid to ask somebody.
Yeah, good tip. Epistle?
Don't be afraid to look something up. I was running a number of Mythic 2s on my mage and was not happy with how much DPS I was putting out there. And so I just did a little bit of research and discovered a small thing, that one of my talents was off the global cooldown, which completely changed how I play and made a big difference in terms of my output. And it's kind of a silly thing, but if I hadn't been kind of suspicious and done a little research to find it, I wouldn't be doing as much damage.
Tap?
My advice would be, or my tip, is don't forget this is a game and it's meant to be fun. You know, so with all the seriousness of our gear and you know, knowing what we're doing, that's all important, very important. But don't forget that this is here to have fun. If you're not having fun, maybe you should find something else to do.
Very true. Very true. Bronzebeard?
I think what you always need to be doing whenever you have spare time in the game is analyze the actions you can take that can better optimize what you have. So, okay, sure, I might be able to spend about 5 hours doing a whole bunch of world quests to get gear, but I have artifact traits that can level, and if I spend 5 minutes, I may get a 10% DPS increase because I get a golden trait. So you always have to think about what is the most important thing for me to progress right now that can improve my character the most. One thing isn't going to cut it. It's always a good idea to be diverse in your approaches for self-betterment.
Yeah, good point. So, Joe Bowie kind of hit on something that I've always thought of, and I think to me personally, I think it's something that Blizzard does deliberately, but I'm probably totally wrong, and I just want your guys' opinions. Do you think, as far as getting gear, there are some tunes that are luckier on the rolls than others? Joe Bowie?
Yeah, absolutely.
God.
My warrior, Earl Grey, is the luckiest tune. He's so lucky that my wife even knows how lucky he is, and she doesn't even play WoW. So, like for an example, I mean, he's the tune that I've just gotten geared up, that it took me literally hours to get him as well geared as it took me weeks to get Joe Bowie. Joe Bowie is well geared and he has luck by attrition. Earl Grey has luck just because he has luck. He got a. I went to do a world quest that had a relic that was like 845, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'll get that relic. It's a better relic than I've got right now, and I do it, and it Titan forges to 885, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Joe Bowie doesn't even have an 885 relic yet. So yeah.
How about Lorelei?
Yeah, I think there is something definite about that because I can run any of my tunes through dungeons and I will get absolutely nothing every single time. I don't even expect gear anymore from dungeons. My first legendary I got on an alt just running past a chest sitting on the ground and said, I ran past it and said, I was here. Why don't I just go pick it up? And bam, there it was. I've gotten 2 cents on Lorelei the exact same way, just stopping and picking up a chest. But I get nothing of value in my world quests most of the time and nothing at all from dungeons. So I'm looking at, I struggle to get gear every single time.
Epistle?
Okay, on Epistle, his neck is now a Titan Forged drop from a world boss at 885. That was last week. That was the first piece over 860 that he ever got that was of any use to him. On my mage, the first week I take down the world boss, get a piece of gear. It's Titan Forged. My bonus roll also gets a piece of gear. The next week, same thing happens. So Andromeda has all kinds of gear and has caught up to Epistle. It's very, very sad. Now, further to that, on my wife's account, not only she get every mount drop that ever happened, but my daughter was playing around on one tune, finished a high mountain quest, opened her box, the first one, and there is a orange drop for her. First box, legendary.
Unbelievable. Tappuccino?
Oh my god, I don't even know how I can run raids because of the way I get gear. My main tune, and it sounds like with everybody's, from what I'm hearing, is that our main tunes have the worst luck. I don't get stuff that drops on dungeons or on raids. I end up, thank God that we can now get stuff from each other in the raids. I at least have won something that way. And like I said, I don't know how I gear. It almost seems like the more you play a character, the least likely you're, going to get what you need. So, yeah, I would have to say that I don't even think it's a luck of the draw. I just think we're cursed on our main tunes.
Joe Bowie's luck is typically he gets a lot of drops, but they're not usually what he needs.
Yeah, drops happen, but they're not an update or an upgrade rather, or it's something I've already got or just doesn't have the stats. I don't know how I gear up. I mean, I'm decent. My gear is decent, but I couldn't tell you how I got it.
Bronzebeard?
For me, what does it matter? I'm just going to keep farming. I don't care if one of my tunes is more lucky than another. I'll play what I want to play. And I don't care what you do, Blizzard.
You do have a legendary though, don't you?
Wow, 10% extra movement speed. So overpowered.
Well, get you out of danger and maybe keep you alive. That's not a bad thing.
I have Heroic Leap in charge for that.
Nice. All right, so our very last question, as always, recommendations for add-ons for our listeners. Joe Bowie.
I'm going to go with a little add-on that doesn't do a whole lot, but it is pretty helpful, especially if you're running dungeons and that sort of thing, called Saved Instances. And what Saved Instances does is it just keeps track of what dungeons you've done that week. or raids, and basically anything that's on a timer. And it puts together a little, like a little chart that shows you the various things that you've completed, so you don't have to go into your lockout things and kind of look at it. You can just quick at a glance. It even puts a little icon on my broker bar that I mentioned last week, chocolate bar, where it's just a little key, and I mouse over on that, and I can see that I've done uh, which mythic dungeons I've done, how many bosses in there I've killed this week, at what level it was. I can see how much garrison resources, uh, ba- basic stats about my character, and it's customizable too. You can change some of the stuff that it shows you, but it's a very handy little add-on for the average dungeon raider person.
Okay, Lorelei.
I'm going to talk about another one that's just a time saver, and that's one called Postal, and it just helps you with your mailbox. If you get a lot of stuff in your mailbox, then instead of clicking on each thing, you can just click on a little button that says Open All, and it just bam puts everything in your bags all at one time. And it's very easy. I can also, if I've typed in somebody like a tune of mine or somebody in my guild or a friend, as soon as you start typing their name, that the names will show up in a drop down box, and then you can just click on it, so you don't even have to finish typing their name. So I like the add-ons right now that just save me a little bit of time.
I have to admit, I use that one personally myself, and I love it.
It's great.
I don't know if I could live without it. Let's put it that way. Epistle?
Well, I wanted to talk about Mogget today because some people had been talking about how useful it was for them. But as it turns out, I tried to download it and it's not up to date, and so I didn't get to play around with it. So I wanted to ask people's opinion on if you do want to play around with your appearance, what they would recommend, because this one's not working for me.
That's a good question.
I mostly have been using the in-game one, which does not have as many cool features as Mogget has, but it's been useful enough for me to be able to find some pieces of gear that maybe I hadn't noticed before. And that's just in your collections tab in WoW, and you can select the different piece of gear along the top, and gear that you have already is brightly colored, and then anything that you don't have is a little bit grayed out, but you can still get information about where that piece of gear comes from, and you can control click on any of those pieces of gear and it'll pop open the little dressing room window and show what that piece of gear looks like on your character. You can't save groups, but you can at least preview them and see how you like them on your character.
Okay.
That's cool.
Tappuccino?
I really can't think of one. I do want to make a comment on Cell Junk. I think that was the one we talked about last week, someone had mentioned, and which is very handy. If not, a add-on called Cell Junk, and was it Lorelei? Was it you that mentioned it last week?
Yes.
Yes, and I went and downloaded that, and it's fantastic. You just, like you said, you go to sell your gear, you hit that one button that sells all the junk in your bag. And a nice feature I liked about it too was that it gives you a total of how much gold you just made out of it. So I think I really like that. I just wanted to make a comment on that. And I really can't think of an add-on that I'd like to comment on besides that one at this time.
Yeah, that's good. Bronzebeard?
I think really what you just need to have for add-ons is things that can supply with more information. Things like a world quest tracker, deadly boss mods, or something like SCADA or Recount is really all you need when it comes to add-ons. That's all that I can really find useful in an add-on. Something that provides me with extra information to make a decision.
Sure. Yeah, that's always good advice. So one that I want to bring up, because I'm with Lorelei, I'm a time saver because I got 11 tunes to go through and try to do all this stuff. I use something called auto repair. So
Yeah.
if you like cell junk, you'll love auto repair. So basically what it does is you can set it in one of two options. So anytime you hit a vendor that you can repair your armor on, you can set it to either auto repair all your armor all at once to the guild loot, because you can, if you're in a guild that allows you to do that, you can pull from guild repair, or you can set it to pull out of your own pocket. I love it because there's been times when I'm trying to run up to the person who has the mammoth mount to do my repair, and they get off of it. And it throws the little dudes down on the ground, and there's like 3 seconds that they're visible that you can click on it, and that's all the time I need. I can right-click on that when he's on the ground, and it pops up the window, auto-sells, and then the window goes away because the little guy disappears. I've done that dozens of times. So auto-repair. So thanks, guys. That was a really good podcast. I appreciate it all. Thank you, listeners. This is number 12 for us. That's awesome. Let's see if we can't do better next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yep, thank you.
See you guys
Happy
around.
holidays, everyone.
And we'll see you all on Friday, right?
Yeah.
Right. I'll be there.
I'll be there.
Awesome. If you like this podcast, throw us a like and subscribe to our channel. And please, leave comments or questions below. Maybe we'll answer them on the air next podcast. We are hosted on Podomatic.com. Our website is lionspridetavern.podomatic.com. Our podcast also airs on iTunes for Apple users, Google Play for Androids, and YouTube. Just search World of Warcraft Lions Pride Tavern podcast. See you next week, and thanks for listening.